The Wests Tigers podcast is brought to you by the Wests Tigers Podcast Forum. Join the conversation today at weststigerspodcast.com.au.
It's the West Tigers podcast for episode number 444, and Josh, it is the first midweek edition of the West Tigers podcast for the year and for a little while, and it's really exciting because we've got another game of football, and it's only, 48 hours away, which is even more unbelievable. It's West Tigers up against Penrith, the second trial at Leichhardt Oval. The team has been announced. Obviously, we're going to have a bit of a chat about that lineup. When you looked at the team named by Benji, any surprises? Did anything sort of stand out? Anything you think might give us a bit more idea where things might be heading?
Oh, I think in the starting 13, the ones who weren't there were probably the surprise. Skelton obviously not playing out with a niggling injury, and Terrell May. I mean, there'd been questions about his fitness over the summer, so that was a surprise. But other than that, I thought the top 13 was fairly standard and fairly well expected, which is good. The bench is interesting, and it's hard to tell when you name a 15-man bench kind of whether it's real. But I always find it interesting who they kind of name in those 14, 15, 16, 17. And I thought Madden and Attard being in 14 and 15 was very high on the list, but maybe those are the only ones that fit them. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, that's true. They only had the smaller size because they are smaller size guys. They were the only jerseys they had to fit. I don't know about that, but I agree with you. It does seem a little bit odd because I think probably even Jack Attard and Jack Attard's greatest friends wouldn't have put him at number 15 in this trial. He by all accounts, should be at 27, 28, something like that. So maybe that's a sign of how highly held he is within the club, and maybe it's a little reminder to Jareem and his manager that we've got this other guy who's not that far off first grade.
Ooh, very controversial. Perhaps it is, Joel. Perhaps it is.
The lineup is, of course, Buller, Makasini, and Taruva on the wings. I think that. Well, we know that Skelton has an injury. It's a shoulder injury. We're still a month away from round 2. We don't know if he's going to recover, but you'd suggest that may be where Makasini starts the year, I think.
Did you think if they were fully fit that they would have picked Skelton there yesterday? I'm not 100% sure, really. So
yeah, that's an excellent point. Yeah, the way that he went, 3 tries.
Oh, so impressive.
Big body. And yeah, I understand what you're saying for sure. Yeah, maybe there's that possibility. And I think Makasini is just going to keep, hopefully, having those performances which make it so that you cannot leave him out and you've got to find a way to get him in there.
Wouldn't that be great?
That would be fantastic. Taylor May and Stafford Toa in the centres, probably no great surprises there. Luai and Dewey, we all knew that Dewey was going to get the first cab off the rank, the first go at the number 7 jersey. Just in regards to Makasini, Josh, so I listened to the Appy Koroisau press conference that he did, was put up on the West Tigers website, and he described Makasini as being a special talent, and he says he wasn't surprised by his performance last week. And maybe that's the thing we as fans, not that we want to hype him up and talk him up too much, but maybe we need to have higher expectations as well. Like most of us were sort of saying, or most people were saying, we should take it slow on him and let him, ease him in. But maybe he's just good enough.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was listening to Josh Reynolds, former West Tiger, on a podcast on the way home today, and he was talking about Makasini being in the under-19s New South Wales side, and he was the 18th man for that side last year. But he said him and Josh Jackson were coaches, and all week watching him at training, they were like, we need to find a way to get this guy into the side. Like they were blown away by his size and his physicality, his ability to kind of out jump the opposition. So I think he's special, and hopefully we're going to see some more of that. I mean, last week was great against, genuine first graders like Tommy Talau out in that back line, but it's a big step up on for Friday against the Penrith backs. So
yeah, it's a huge challenge for the whole team straight off because Penrith is going to be be ready to go. I think. Obviously, they're a little bit closer to their first game than us as well, so probably a little bit more intensity from them. As I mentioned 2 podcasts ago, Taylor May. I'm expecting Taylor to hit the ground running this year, given that he's had the full off season. He can't have been very well conditioned, but he still blew our socks off with what he did late last year. But I mean, he hadn't played for 18 months or so before that. Like, if
Look,
Taylor is fit, look out.
yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, not just hadn't played, but he'd hardly trained. Like, he'd only been back at training for a few weeks. Like, usually players are coming off a full off season and they're fully fit. Um, I expect him to be, in the origin conversation by middle of the year. I think probably his off-field stuff might cause him some problems there, but I think the talent is there and the performance hopefully is too. So yeah,
Yeah, well, absolutely. We've seen glimpses of that talent, and if we add in a little bit more fitness and a little bit more gelling and a little bit more getting into West Tigers systems, then that's a really promising thing as well.
can't wait.
Going back to Appy and some comments on Adam Dewey, he was asked the question as to why did Adam Dewey get the job for the halfback job in this trial. He said it was about his leadership and his running game. So that's an interesting one as well because. We saw with Latu Fainu last year when he came off the bench that it was his running game that provided a yin to the yang of Jerome Luai, who sort of skips around and sets players up, and Latu straightened things up a little bit more. So maybe that's what we're going for from our halfback, from Dewey, is to provide not just a ball playing ability, but to actually using that big body and running lines and effectively pushing us forward through our halves, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And you see some other teams that play, we talked about we have too many 5'8". Well, Melbourne have, 3 fullbacks who are playing in the halves and at fullback. And you see those sides all play off a great hooker. Harry Grant at Melbourne. Sharks did it more with Bailey last year. Perhaps the same will happen with us. We're going to play off Appy and have those big or quality running halves on either side to kind of drive us forward. So.
Yeah,
And Adam is big. He's a
he is.
strong, big boy. So yeah.
How do you see in the Josh crystal ball? How do you see Adam Dewey's career progressing from here? Yeah, it's hard to know, isn't it? What's going to happen with Adam?
It is hard to know because he's one injury away from kind of the end of his career. But on the other hand, he's always had a lot of talent. He obviously has the attitude for the halves, which is I think is a strong part of it. Like yeah, you have to talk a team around the field. So this is a big year for Adam. If he does well and kind of stars in that halfback role, which he's after, and he's always talked about being a half. If he has a big year this year and the Tigers have a good year, it could be the making of Adam Dewey. So, but if his knee goes, then it could be the end of Adam Dewey. So,
Mm.
yeah,
Yeah,
could go
touch
either
wood.
way.
Yeah, touch wood for him. It's been incredible that he's come back. Like we forget just how low he was when he did his knee that last time, and a lot of people were saying it's time to hang up the boots. And
Yeah,
he's got this inner resolve, and he won't give up. And it's full credit to him. We may not necessarily all be the biggest Adam Dewey fans for what he brings in his play, but you can't test his character. You can't question that. It's been
and he
phenomenal.
loves the club. And
Mm,
he's always been a Tiger since he's joined. He's been really committed. So yeah, I'm an Adam Dewey fan. So I hope it goes really well for him this year.
100%. The forwards were where some of the shocks were, or the weren't quite expecting that. I kind of expected Bundy Afoa to grab one of the starting spots myself, and he did in the number 8 jersey. Fonua Pole got the number 10, and then Kai Pearce-Paul, Sam Fainu, and Alex Twal at lock. No great surprises. I think I said that the other night on the pod. Alex Twal will be getting ready to pop that 13 jersey on and keeping it warm for round 2, I'm pretty sure. Um, no Royce Hunt and no Terrell May. Like, do we know what's going on? Royce, you suspect he'd been in New Zealand for the Indigenous game. Uh, I don't know. It just seems a little bit weird that we're not playing Royce unless he's picked up
Yeah.
a niggle. And Terrell, no real explanation.
Um, Terrell, I think, is more unusual. I think Royce, for a big guy, he played 40 minutes on Sunday. He wouldn't have flown back till Monday. That's a quick turnaround, and it's still it's still 3 weeks till we play a first grade game. There's no point pushing him. I think to me that kind of makes sense. And the rest of the first graders are only getting one trial. Royce has had his one trial. Maybe to be nice if he could get 15 minutes, but I don't think they need to push that. Terrell, yeah, it's interesting, but I think what it does do is it kind of, one, we get to see Bunty. There's been lots of talk in the off season about how well he's been training, so that's kind of exciting. And two, it's time for Fonua Pole to step up. He's the pack leader this week. He's the star prop. He needs to take that Terrell May tag and lead the team forward for the first half an hour. He's kind of done it in bits and pieces over the last couple of years, but I think we all know it's kind of not been every week. There's been great weeks, but there's been a bunch of, okay weeks. I'd really like to see him come out on Friday night against the Penrith team just for that first 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and really lead the pack and, charge through the middle. So hoping to see more of that. What do you think, Joel?
Well, I think there's been a lot of debate about where is he better off the bench or is he better as a starter? And I actually happen to think that his better games have been the ones where he started. And I think sometimes coming off the bench, especially if you're coming off the bench to provide impact, that can be a bit of pressure and it may not necessarily suit the best parts of his game. So I'm looking forward to seeing him start. I agree. It does take a little while for props to mature and to get to that point. Some of the fundamental mistakes made by Fonua last year, some defensive deficiencies, his hands let him down every now and then as well. That hopefully they're things he can overcome. Body shape, body size, all of those things. He's got all the attributes, but he just hasn't been able to perform consistently. And I think giving him a starting position might be the way to get that out of him. And then watching him and monitoring him, okay, is he burning out? Is it too much? And a lot of that comes back to how much is, Terrell May apparently is going to be right for round 2. He's apparently fit enough. He reckons he doesn't need to play trials. I don't know how true that is.
He is a weird character sometimes.
He's a weird character. He's out of left field. But I mean, if Terrell's going to play less minutes, and we've got these strike props in Bunty, and we've got Royce, and then we've got some pretty solid guys like Fainu. You could possibly put Twal at some point in the games in the middle, into prop. Then there are some. Sorry.
Big Red, Alex Seyfarth,
Seyfarth
is
there as well. We don't want Seyfarth on an edge. So there's you can kind of see that there's some malleability there and there's some possible variety. And maybe a Terrell May and Fonua Pole starting team might be something that we might see. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think, all going well, they're the two starting props round 2, hopefully both fit and firing. And then, as you said, there's plenty of options off the bench. So, and I think that competition for spots is really good. Like that's something we haven't had in a lot of positions over the years. So I think it's really exciting in the front row to hopefully have with Bunty and Royce and Fainu and Alex Twal, Kit, some real competition. I heard Benji speak earlier, and he said Kit had a really good game. It was kind of the first player he mentioned when he was talking about guys who had a good game. So hopefully we're seeing lots of competition in that front row because you're always going to get injuries. You want to have plenty of blokes lining up to charge off the back fence. So.
Yeah, Kit's 2026 is going to be an interesting one to see as well. And is it going to be that he's signed with the Perth franchise, or is he going to make a name for himself here at the Tigers? We'll have to wait and watch and see. He's certainly got some quality there this year that he's going to have to get past to get his opportunity, I think.
Yep.
Just in regards to the forward or the front row depth, I saw on the West Tigers podcast forum, there's discussion there about this team, and without Terrell and without Royce Hunt, somebody said they believe, I can't remember, I'm sorry if I'm using their statement without quoting them, but I can't remember who the user was, but they said, once with those two gone, things are starting to look a bit thin up front.
I think that's why it's a good chance on Friday with those two out, is to say actually with Terrell May and with the size of Royce Hunt out. I mean, Royce missed a fair few games in reserve grade last year, so that one I'm less worried about. But with Terrell May, who was playing 60 to 80 minutes last year in the front row out, this is a chance for them to step up and say, actually, we can take on the big Penrith pack and charge through them. And that's a real opportunity this week. I know it's only a trial, and I know we're still in full training because we don't play it all round 2. But these guys have been training all summer. Now's a chance to come out and really attack. And I think trials are generally in the first half hour when the big guys are on. It is a very forward game because everyone's keen to come out and bash each other. So hopefully we see a lot of that. But it's an interesting thing. I think if Terrell was out for any period of time, we have a couple of spots just still in the squad. So perhaps we do need another prop. But I think this weekend's a good chance to show us if that's true or not. So.
How important is that first 30 minutes? How important is it for us to come out? And I know that we're not playing for another couple of weeks, but to come out and tell the NRL that, we're a team, we're a serious team.
I think that's the only important part of this trial. Like, I don't really care what happens in the last 50 minutes, because players start swapping around and moving around. But for that first 20, 30 minutes, you've got your top side on the field and their top side on the field, and everyone's excited, and the boys have all come back and they want to get out there and run hard. We don't need to be dominant, but especially after we went down, I know it was the kind of a different group of players, but we were almost down 20-0 in the first 20 last week. That happens again, it starts to look like a trend and not just the way that a game flowed. So, I'd be really looking forward to this week. The boys hopefully getting out there and really putting in a hard first 30, and then it becomes a trial after that, and who kind of knows what happens. But if we're even or in front after the first 30, I think that's a good night, and everything else is what it is. So, yeah.
The funny thing is when I look just sort of, holistically at the 2025 season, I think if you asked me one quality or one thing about the team that I tend to remember is that we were poor starters. Now, a lot of games I seem to remember as being, after 20 minutes going, geez, we're not doing too well in this game. And then finding, when the subs start happening and fatigue starts coming in, that we got better. So maybe that's something that there is something in that in terms of the team, is to try and turn that around and start like a house on fire. Conversely, I remember some games where I thought we played really well for the first 15 to 20 minutes, but ended up losing too.
Yeah, and sometimes I think teams front load their energy or back load their energy. I mean, I agree with you. I think our first 20 was kind of probably our weakest, but maybe we were fitter and trying to win that fitness battle. And suppose the boys have been standards have been up and been training harder than ever. So hopefully we see some of that fitness on the weekend. And look, at the end of the day, it's only a trial, and I'd rather win the game in round 2 than the trial. But I'd still like to see a good performance. So.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you say that, but after 5 minutes in that Penrith game, Penrith trial, you'd be like, I don't want to lose this one.
No,
I still
not
want
at
to
all.
win.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yes, the Cowboys game, vitally important. Bunty Afawa apparently lost 17 kilos. He's dropped from 130 to about 113 kilos, which is a pretty good effort. So his debut in our colours, but also Kai Pearce-Paul. I listened to Kai Pearce-Paul's interview. He said his aim this year is consistency. It was interesting. He said about Newcastle last year that the side was a little bit all over the place, and I think most of us looking from the outside in would say that probably sounds right. Coaching changes and a few players that upset the apple cart and those sorts of things. So he wants to come and he wants to be consistent. I love the sound of that. But he also said, I'd like to bring the same impact, because he was asked about Gareth Ellis. I'd love to bring the same impact that Gareth had on the Tigers. And that's a massive level to try and aim for, but that'd be nice.
That is so exciting to hear. I mean, if he could bring 50% of what Gareth Ellis brought to the Tigers, that'd be fantastic. So, look, I'm really excited to see KPP this week. I think he played well at Newcastle. His defence was good, but I also think he was kind of forced to put away the offload and the attacking play. He was wasted on that right edge at Newcastle in a fairly shambolic team, to be fair. It's really exciting. Like, he's the big signing for this year. He's the one we haven't seen in our colours. Perhaps we all saw bits of him in Newcastle, but no one was kind of rushing to watch the Knights play last year. So, but now he's on the Tigers. I'm really excited to see how he goes. This week and this season, and hopefully he's charging through like Gareth Ellis. That'd be very exciting. Very exciting.
And from memory, Gareth played on that right edge, didn't he?
I think so. Yeah.
Because I remember Blair being on the left and Ellis being on the right.
Yeah. Oh.
And I had such high expectations. didn't quite work out as well as we'd like that year that Blair arrived, which was
Well,
2013, 12,
2012.
12 was it?
Yeah.
Seems
We were
like a
favourites
lifetime
for
ago.
the comp, and
Mm,
ended up it all fell apart, and Benji wanted to leave, and yeah, it all fell apart that year.
mm,
So yeah, yeah,
mm. Yeah, I've seen that story a few times
yeah.
now. On the bench, as we mentioned, Madden and Attard right up the top of the reserves list. At 14, 15, Alex Safar 16, Sione Fainu 17, Patrick Herbert 18, pretty high up on the list, and has just signed a 2-year deal after impressing after the train and trial arrangement that he'd been on. Josh, a 2-year deal, I'm a bit more conservative. I would have given him a year and would have waited to see how he goes.
Yeah, I would have too, and I do wonder. I mean, he's probably on, fairly close to minimum wage, and perhaps it was that he wasn't willing to take a 1-year deal. He's been he had a job, he was working down there. Perhaps a 1-year deal. He's a guy with a family. And part of that 1 year is already over. He's already been, over the summer. Perhaps he needed a 2-year deal, and Benji's all about family. But also, I think they must have seen quite a bit because, like you, I thought a 1-year deal was all like I was expecting him to get upgraded, but I didn't expect to see a 2-year deal. But hopefully, that's a sign of how well he's been going.
And I guess it's a sign too that we've gone from, our number one backup for the backs is Makasini, but you'd say that Patrick Herbert is now number two. He's going to be next cab off the rank if required.
Yeah, and we did have a shortage of backline depth this year when you do look at it, after losing Staines, Naden, Felity to an extent for Tape. We did have a very limited amount of experience in those outside backs. So I guess he brings that kind of experience. And the good thing is you're signing a guy for 2 years, probably on minimum wage, who has played 70 first grade games. So he's up to the level. It's not very often you get that. It's a bit of a weird way to get here, but I guess if he's trained well over the off season, you do know he can play NRL. So
Yeah, he is capable of playing NRL
yes,
for sure, which
yes,
is
good
not a
word.
bad backup to have somebody
We've
that's
had worse.
coming off 60 first grade games as opposed to 3 first grade games.
Yep.
Tony Suka, Kit Lily, Tristan Hope, Heath Mason, Luke Lily, Jared Haywood, Maverick Geyer all the way down at 25. So Maverick, I think, will be starting the year in New South Wales Cup, I would presume.
I'd imagine. Yep.
Tino Tavana, Charlie Murray, also a fair way down the pecking order, 27, and Javon Andrews, 28. I'm glad to see Javon get a chance to show his wares. Obviously, Ethan Roberts not available as well, so we're not going to get a
That's the
go
other one.
and have a look at Ethan Roberts, unfortunately. Just on Haywood, Appy said of him, because obviously, young hooker, protege, master, Appy said he's a big competitor, like one of the most competitive players in the squad, and he's got a big future. So, ringing endorsements for Jared Haywood from Appy. So we'll see what Jared could do in against some pretty good competition as well. So I'd like to see, I don't know if you agree, Josh, I'd like to see Jared get some game time, maybe at the 30-minute mark. Get him in there first half.
Yeah, I'd like to see him come on and kind of take those minutes where Appy will need a break during the season, and kind of maybe 10 minutes either side of half time. I think that makes sense. But they've also got Hope on the bench. They've got um, probably one for you, Joel. Jock Madden's in the 14. Do you think he'll come on and play hooker, or will he be the 14 to start the season? What's the go with Jock Madden at 14? Do you think?
Will Alex Twile move to prop? Do we move to lock? And
Ooh,
Jock Madden to halfback, perhaps after half an hour, maybe I don't know,
there you
something
go.
like that. Perhaps I think that we will definitely see Jock Madden playing at hooker at some stage this year. Of course, Latu Fainu also not available.
Yeah.
Still, maybe I think it's a couple of rounds into the season before we're going to see Latu, which is unfortunate. But I think Jock is going to be filling in at 7 and 9, I think, at different times. I just wanted to go back to that Fonua Pole. It's a little bit off topic, but we were talking about Fonua Pole, rising to the next level. But that Fox Sports story, like if ever you wanted to see the low point that Australian sports journalism has got to, you read that Fox Sports story about Fonua Pole and how, oh well, I'm going to have to join the Melbourne Storm to play with my brother. And the inference in the whole story is that the West Tigers aren't good enough, and it's only a matter of time before he goes to Melbourne and plays in a better team and a better. It was ridiculously poorly written. I know he wants to play with his brother, but just inferencing that, well, he'll have to go to Melbourne, and well, what a shame that would be.
And I think the other thing is, if you ask someone, would you like to play footy with your brother at some stage? What is he going to say? He's
You're
going
going
to
to say
say,
yes.
absolutely not.
Yeah.
I hate my brother. I'm not sure what his answer's meant to be. And his brother's in Melbourne. Yeah, I think that's a Fox Sports beat up kind of pre-season story. I don't think. Look, his brother's huge, and if he becomes good, I'd love him here. We could always have Pole and Pole, and May and May, and Fainu and Fainu and Fainu and Fainu. So, be brothers everywhere. So.
Yeah. And you've
Yeah.
got Jerome Luai's brother as well.
There you go.
So there's that possibility. And you've got another Fainu who Sione said I think it was Sione who said I'd love to see him here at the club as well. So we could just have like 3 names in the guide every week.
That's
just 3 families. You never know. Appy said in that press conference, just a little bit more sort of broadly, he said, when we weren't happy with last year, we want to stay through the trials and tribulations. We're sort of committed to staying close as a group. And he says the connection has lifted. And he was, if you read between the lines, I think he was sort of saying that last year, he had a bit of a cheeky grin, there was some division, which doesn't seem to be there. We saw some really good signs. The whole team travelled up to Newcastle to see the boys, the younger boys, on Sunday. That's an important factor in all of this, because I think there's some improvement that can be made in a team by sticking together and being friends and not having those divisions. And I think we saw a little bit of it at the beginning of last year, but it tended to drift away because of certain events. I remember talking on the pod about, the guys really celebrating the win against Parramatta in that trial. And, it really looked like we'd turned the corner in terms of that, and things got rocky. So if we can maintain that, that's the kind of spirit and that's the kind of camaraderie that can get an okay team through potentially to a 7th or 8th spot.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I think we saw that spirit and that culture on display towards the end of the season when we played the Bulldogs. Why that would be, who knows? But I think that probably solved some of the division in the club, and we saw that go forward. And they do look like a really tight bunch. They're all playing for Benji. All is looking really positive there. I think we're all a little worried about how the Buller contract goes, but I think culture-wise, they all seem to be really tying in. It's a good bunch. They're all really close. The new guys seem to have fitted in well. I mean, they've got Royce Hunt fit. Cronulla couldn't do that in 7 years. So something's working. No, I think, hopefully that all goes well. And a team with a great culture, you can overcome a lot of problems. You can have good players, but without the culture, you don't win. In a salary cap sport, that kind of team camaraderie and that culture is really important. So, and I feel like the boys have it this year, which is good.
Yeah. Any predictions for this trial game?
I'm going to predict that we will be up by 12 at halftime, and then our young blokes will run away with it and put Penrith to the sword in the second half. But you know what? If we're up by 12 at halftime and we lost in the second half, I'd still be more excited about being up by 12 than I would be disappointed by the loss in the second half, because it all gets a bit chaotic in the second half.
Yeah.
My only other prediction is that it'll be the last time Heath Mason sees first grade for quite a while coming
right.
So I reckon looking at being named in number 22 with a bunch of other guys above him, I think that's he's probably reached his ceiling for this year. He's only young, maybe he'll get better, but I think he needs a season in reserve grade to prove that out.
So we're really reading into the numbers that the players would
I really am. Yes,
Tristan
Joel,
Hope,
really
you would expect would have been in 14, and Tristan Hope has gone down the pecking order to 21. It's like the charts,
Yep, I'm ready.
It's a popularity contest.
I think the only interesting one on that, though, is that Jack Attard was named in 15, which is probably unexpected. So, as we're joking kind of before the show, perhaps that's because it's the only jersey it fitted him, because he's a small guy. So,
exactly.
So we'll see. We'll see how that plays out both this weekend and over the season. So,
correct. No, he's going to be an interesting one to watch, Attard, over the next couple of years.
What's your prediction, Joel?
My prediction is not as optimistic as yours, because I have looked at the Penrith lineup, and I think that my prediction is that we will go with them for 20 minutes, and it might end up being It may not be a victory, but I think that I think if we can put in a good 20, 30 minutes, I think most of us will be really happy. No injuries. And, we send that message to the NRL that we're not going to get pushed around anymore, that we're a fair dinkum team. I think it's really important to take that opportunity and stand up against a team that, has been the yardstick. So another prediction I'll make is that we'll come back on Sunday night and do the post-game podcast, and we'll have all the one-word submissions from the West Tigers podcast forum. And I hope my one word is not physicality. I hope I can leave physicality in the past.
Hopefully it's good physicality.
Fonua, Kai Pearce-Paul, Sam Fainu, come on, you got to smash them.
Yep. Nice, very nice.
Thank you, Josh. We'll catch you soon.
Thanks, Joel.